Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Macbeth Explained Annotate With Me series. In this video, we will be looking at Act 3, Scene 6, the final scene of Act 3. It's a very long act and quite a lot happens. This is a scene featuring Lennox, one of the lords, and an unnamed lord. And as I've explained before, Lennox is often a character used by Shakespeare for exposition. And exposition is part of the play where the audience is being given information. So this isn't necessarily a scene that's very strong for characterization or to show us the character arcs that our sort of main characters, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, are going through, but it's a scene that really focuses on letting us know the kind of key events. It's almost like a bit of a recap, an insight into what's going on in the world of the play outside of what we have seen in the scenes. And of course, because Macbeth is our main character, we've sort of been seeing the events from almost his perspective. We've been following what's happening to him. But this scene gives us an insight into what's going on with other characters and the rest of the country. And so this is not a scene that is likely to come up in an exam as a key scene, but it is a scene that tells us a lot about the story, and therefore it's quite an important scene to understand. I'll be going through it. As you can tell, I've picked out a few sort of quotations that are important, but there's not really many key quotes here that you are likely to sort of use in an essay. There's a couple of quotes that are good for the themes of tyranny / kingship, divine right of kings. So those are quotes that you could use, but there's much better scenes out there and much better quotations that you could use. Still, I make sure to explain it as best I can so you have a good understanding of what's happening at this point in the play. So as usual, if you'd like to pause the video at this point, go grab anything that you might need and press play when you are ready. Scene 6, Falls the Palace. So we're back in the royal palace. Enter Lennox and another lord. And in this whole scene, Lennox is going to sort of recap what's happened so far. But you'll see from his tone and from the way that he describes the events that people have sort of grown suspicious about the events that have happened. So he says, "My former speeches have but hit your thoughts, which can interpret further. Only I say things have been strangely born." So clearly they've spoken about what's happened before, and clearly they have an idea or a feeling that things have been strange or unusual. The gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth. Mary, he was dead. And the right valiant Banquo walked too late, whom you may say, if it please you, Fleance killed, for Fleance fled. Men must not walk too late. So he's saying, it's strange, isn't it? The gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth, and now he's dead. And the valiant Banquo walked out too late and must have been killed by Fleance, since Fleance ran away. And of course, there's a lot of sarcasm in this idea, because Fleance is a child, and also, Fleance killing Banquo makes absolutely no sense. And his conclusion of the murder of Banquo is, men must not walk too late. Maybe Banquo's mistake was walking out too late. So here you can tell that there's a heavy use of sarcasm in this section. Who cannot want the thought how monstrous it was for Malcolm and for Donalbain to kill their gracious father? Damned fact, yeah? Who can't think it a monstrous thing for Malcolm and Donalbain to have killed their father? But of course, now that he's saying this in the context of everything else that he's saying, we're realizing that people are no longer believing that it was Malcolm and Donalbain that killed their father. They're starting to look at all the events kind of put together and thinking, well, if Fleance ran away, if Donalbain and Malcolm ran away, and so therefore people think that they killed their father, does that mean that Fleance running away means that he killed his father? And all of these events put together kind of add up to the truth, which is what people are starting to work out, the truth about Macbeth. How did it grieve Macbeth? Did he not straight in pious rage the two delinquents tear, that were the slaves of drink and thralls of sleep? He's saying, but do you not remember how much Macbeth grieved, how sad he was at the death of Duncan? Did he not straightway kill the two drunken guards? Was that not nobly done? Yeah, was that not a noble act for him to do? Again, absolutely dripping with sarcasm. Aye, and wisely too. Yeah, it wasn't just noble, but it was wise as well, for 'twould have angered any heart alive to hear the men deny it. And he's saying this is really sort of not a play on words, but a heavy sarcasm here. He's saying, yes, and it was not only a noble thing for Macbeth to kill the guards, but it was a smart thing, because who wouldn't have been angry to hear the men deny that they had something to do with Duncan's death? And what he's implying here is that Macbeth didn't kill the guards because he was so angry, and he was so loving and loyal towards Duncan, and he would have been angry to hear the men lie about Duncan's death, but more like Macbeth killed the guards because he didn't want to hear the men deny that they had anything to do, because then that would sort of expose him. People are starting to actually see the truth behind Macbeth's actions, and you can see it through the sarcastic tone that Lennox is using. So that, I say, he has borne all things well. Well, he seems to be doing really well. And here, he's sort of out loud expressing approval for Macbeth. But of course, the sarcasm that he's used so far tells us that he feels the opposite of this, that Macbeth has not borne all things well. And we will see later on that they start referring to him as a tyrant. So not only has he not been doing well, but he's been actively doing very, very badly, because he's now considered not even a bad king, but a tyrant, a sort of abusive authority figure. And I do think that had he Duncan's sons under his key, and please heaven he shall not, they should find what were to kill the father. He's sort of implying here that if Macbeth got hold of Malcolm and Donalbain, he would basically execute them. He'd blame them for Duncan's murder and execute them. And he's sort of implying that it's a good thing that they ran away, because if not, they would have been killed just like their father. So should Fleance, and he's also worked out what we already know for a fact. The fact that if Fleance hadn't run away, he would also have been killed by Macbeth. But peace, from broad words, and cause he failed his presence at the tyrant's feast, I hear Macduff lives in disgrace. And here we find out the repercussions of Macduff not going to Macbeth's feast, which is that it has greatly angered Macbeth, and as a result, Macduff lives in disgrace. He's sort of been kind of almost like cast out from society, or his reputation has been affected as a result. But of course, since Macbeth is now seen as a tyrant, as we can tell from Tyrant's Feast, and we know there was only one feast going on, that was Macbeth's feast, even though Macduff might, technically speaking, live in disgrace from the current king, if people think that the current king is a tyrant, this would make Macduff the opposite of being in disgrace. But we know for a fact now that Macbeth was very angry about the fact that Macduff didn't come to his feast, and tried to punish him publicly as a result. Sir, can you tell where he bestows himself? And here Lennox is trying to find out where's Macduff gone. And we can tell here that people on this, in this conflict between Macbeth and Macduff, people are not siding with Macbeth. They are siding with Macduff. And the Lord doesn't even bother. He's not the Lord. The other Lord is not like Lennox. He doesn't sort of hide what he thinks behind sort of sarcasm. He says outright what he thinks. He openly calls Macbeth a tyrant. He says, the son of Duncan, and we find out what's actually been going on with Malcolm. Since all we know so far is that Malcolm sort of ran away at the beginning of the play when his father got killed, and we knew that he intended to go to England. But here we found out what he's actually been up to. So the son of Duncan, specifically here Malcolm, from whom this tyrant holds the due of birth, lives in the English court, and is received of the most pious Edward with such grace that the malevolence of fortune nothing takes from his high respect. So we find out that Malcolm, since his sort of heirloom, since the throne has been stolen from him by Macbeth, by the tyrant, has actually gone to the English court and is staying with the English king, who's actually shown him a lot of kindness. Thither Macduff is gone to pray the holy king, and upon his aid to wake Northumberland and warlike Siward. So Macduff has actually gone to the English court as well to go join Malcolm, and another lord has gone with them, the Lord of Northumberland, warlike Siward. So we know that not only does Malcolm have the support of the King of England, but he's got the support of other lords as well. That by the help of these, and him above to ratify the work, and hopefully with the help of the King of England, Macduff, the Lord of Northumberland, and of course him above, so God and the help of God on top of it, we may again give to our tables meat, sleep to our nights, free from our feasts and banquets bloody knives, do faithful homage and receive free honours, all which we pine for now. So here we find out that people are hopeful. People want Malcolm to succeed. They want Malcolm to come back and save them from the tyranny of Macbeth, so that again they can sleep at night and be free of feasts and banquets, bloody knives. He's saying we're free of the constant fear of being murdered ourselves, to do faithful homage, to actually serve a king well and receive free honours and actually be honoured by a king. So all of the things that Macbeth should be providing for his people, safety, security, honour, a good king to sort of be loyal to, no one can have that now. Everyone lives in fear, and everyone lives with the constant sort of anxiety of being the next one to be killed by Macbeth. And people feel like they don't actually have a true king to respect and to love. And this is something that they pine for, something that they really want. And that's why they're really hopeful that Malcolm will be successful and will be able to come back to take his rightful place. And of course, this links in to the divine right of kings. Macbeth can't be a good king because he wasn't chosen. God didn't pick him to be king. God picked Duncan, and therefore Duncan's heir, a rightful heir and son, Malcolm. And because Malcolm isn't king, that's why the country's suffering. He carries on and said, and this report has so exasperated the king that he prepares for some attempts of war. And Macbeth has been so angered by this report of the fact that Macduff has left and Malcolm is getting help from the King of England, that he's actually preparing for war. Lennox said, sent he to Macduff. So did he send someone to go get Macduff? And the Lord says he did. So Macbeth, we find out, actually did send a messenger to summon Macduff to him. And this is what happened. He did, and with an absolute "Sir, not I," the cloudy messenger turns me his back. And so what happened is that Macbeth sent his messenger to go fetch Macduff, and Macduff said, "Sir, not I. No, I'm not coming back." So Macduff point blank refused the orders of Macbeth as king, openly defied him. The cloudy messenger turns his back and hums as who should say, you'll rue the time that clogs me with this answer. So he's saying the messenger seems to be thinking or feeling when Macduff says this to him. He seems to feel or think or say, you'll regret the answer that you've just given me. And this is great foreshadowing because, of course, we already know that Macbeth has turned his sights on Macduff. And we already know how Macbeth deals with his problems and his anxieties when it comes to other characters. And here the messenger sort of hearing Macduff's answer to Macbeth's summons and thinking, oh, you're going to regret your answer, is amazing foreshadowing for what is to happen later on. And it builds tension for us because we think, oh no, like Macduff will regret this. Macbeth is definitely not going to take this kind of disrespect lying down. Lennox says, pardon me, and that well might advise him to a caution, to hold what distance his wisdom can provide. Yet it's probably better at this point if Macduff stays as far away from Macbeth as possible. Some holy angel fly to the court of England and unfold his message ere he come, that a swift blessing may soon return to this our suffering country under a hand accursed. And here in this little section, he's talking about going over or sending a messenger to Macduff to kind of warn him to sort of stay away from Scotland because Macbeth is likely to try something with him to sort of try to kill him as well. But we have a lot of religious imagery in this little section. We have a holy angel, swift blessing, a cursed country, suffering country. And this is an excellent quote if you're writing about the divine right of kings. And we have this idea of Malcolm is on the good side, is on sort of God's side because he's been chosen by God, and angels, a messenger going to him and to Macduff would be like an angel. And because Macbeth is the opposite, he's the person that's defied the divine right of kings, he's a tyrant, and the country's suffering as a result, and his hand is like almost cursed. This idea of Macbeth being sort of cursed or doomed or damned is an idea that comes up a lot and is reiterated here, is repeated here. And this is implying that the country is suffering because Macbeth is not the rightful king. But if Malcolm should return because he is the rightful king, the country would be blessed once more. The country would be sort of protected, not just by Malcolm, but through Malcolm, by God himself. The Lord says, again, more religious imagery, I'll send my prayers with him. I'll send my prayers with the messenger. So all the prayers and the hopes of the characters so far are going towards Malcolm. Everyone is rooting for Malcolm to return and to triumph. Everyone is rooting for Macduff and the lords that are supporting Malcolm. And we're starting to see here that there is not a lot of support for Macbeth. Whatever loyalty Macbeth had at the beginning of the text, whatever good reputation he had, he's completely lost it by now. He's openly being called a tyrant by the other characters. And that's sort of the state of affairs. At the end of Act 3, we've already seen this massive change going through. Well, we've seen Macbeth experience change personally through his sort of mounting anxiety and madness and his sort of growing lack of regard towards human lives and towards other people, and we've seen how that's impacted his reputation with the rest of the characters. So I hope that this was helpful. In the next video we'll be looking at a very important scene, which is the second prophecy scene when Macbeth returns to the witches. It'll be Act 4, Scene 1. So I hope you join us for this one. And as usual, if you have any questions or anything at all, please feel free to drop your questions in the comment. Questions could be about plot, character, quotes. It could be about something I mentioned, about assessment objectives, exam advice, anything at all. And I will respond to your questions as best I can. Hope to see you all in the next video.